You don't focus on the thing that you're trying to get rid of. You find something higher, your creative vision, and you watch it all fall away. I'm walking inside of a grocery store and I feel like I'm almost possessed. I go in with the intention that today I'm going to make a healthy decision. I know that the salads and the chicken breasts are all in the back. I walk over to the back of the store and it was almost like I lost consciousness. I became consumed by this darkness that was inside of me, and I went for the frozen pizza pockets and the Kit Kats and the Bueno chocolate. And while I was picking them up, the chocolates, I would say to myself, I'm gonna eat healthy tomorrow. I ended up doing this for over a year and a half, and I couldn't control it. And this was one of the most painful things I went through because it was self-sabotage. I was so aware of what I was doing. At least I thought I was. I had a vision of myself. I would think about, yeah, I could be healthy, I could have a six-pack, and you're watching content on Instagram of people doing cold plunges and waking up at 4 a.m. and doing all these healthy things. You see that that could be you. You're deeply desiring it, but you can't stop abusing yourself. I would end up eating clean for like 2 or 3 days and I would restart again. It was largely because those 2 to 3 days I was motivated by shame, which is the lowest frequency, and that shame was more painful than the constant numbing I was doing from binge eating. And I was able to sustain it for 2 to 3 days, but as you know, shame is never sustainable. So I would crash over and over again. And it's weird because I was doing a lot of the healthy routines. I was still going to the gym consistently, but my view internally was so messed up and I was doing something. I was numbing, I was blocking something through binge eating. And today I'm gonna explain how I stopped my binge eating and why it's a creativity issue. So whatever your unique bad habit is, instead of calling it a bad habit or a vice, we're gonna call it a blocking device. I got this idea from Julia Cameron in The Artist Way. But essentially what's happening is that because we have a creative vision, the intention has been set. Our mind deeply knows that we can become whatever we want. Remember that whatever you secretly desire to create into the world is also what the earth is deeply desiring for you to create. It needs to come through you. Your intuition might be telling you all the time to do this thing. When we use our blocking devices, it's exactly numbing that energy. So imagine that I knew that I was binge eating. When I was doing that, I would eat a bunch of carbs and then I would get super sleepy and tired afterwards. I knew almost intuitively, not consciously. I knew that because I would be so sleepy, I'm not gonna wanna create at that state. And earlier when I mentioned that inside of my head, when I would pick up the Kit Kat and the pizza pockets, I would say, I'm going to do this tomorrow. And it was the same thing for my creative vision. I'm gonna do my creative vision tomorrow. And that's our brain's subtle way to prevent risk. I know that if I eat a salad today, I'm gonna be in line with my vision, and therefore I'm gonna move into the territory of unfamiliarity. And this happens when we also think about our creative vision. When we think about our creative vision, it means we're desiring, we're not being creative. I desire to be creative because I'm not creative myself. When we embody that mindset of the highest creative ideal, the person who we secretly want to become, when we have that idea inside of our head and we become it mentally, it will order our mind to make the right decisions. You don't focus on the thing that you're trying to get rid of. You find something higher, your creative vision, and you watch it all fall away. And that's why I was stuck in this shame and guilt cycle of binge eating, and then I would watch self-improvement YouTube videos, and then I would do things extreme, get up at 4 a.m. and do cold plunges and do all kinds of weird things. It's because I was lacking that higher purpose. But when you have that creative vision and you're not internally becoming it inside of your head, you're not holding it at the top of your mind. It might be in the back of your mind, maybe occupying 2% of your mind. And from that position, because it's so powerful, it's going to be giving you hunches, intuitive things that you should be doing, ideas and inspiration. But that might be too uncomfortable, too unfamiliar, and therefore we numb that. And slowly and surely we keep numbing that creative voice inside of the back of our heads, and our whole life becomes a museum contained of the artifacts of our fears. I noticed for myself that I had some resistance when it came to posting myself online. So what did I do? I watched all the videos on videography, I bought all the weird equipments and gadgets, but never actually doing the thing. And when it came time to do the thing, I was constantly in that binge cycle because that was what felt familiar to me. I knew that if I filmed the video and jumped and leapt straight into the unknown, I might not be able to cope with it. So that binge eating and constantly saying I'm gonna do it tomorrow was my way to prevent risk and keep familiarity. The thing that I did to stop my binge eating is that I lived in the wish fulfilled. I created a vision of my 10.0 self and I let it saturate my mind as much as possible. I would listen to Adele and different kinds of music to put me in that mood of feeling like that artist, athlete, entrepreneur. I would look for things that got me super excited about the thing that I wanted to do. That naturally spurred me into action. And even though I was doing intermittent fasting and one meal a day and all these weird things, it was that the moment I got excited about my vision and my day stacked up with tasks that were aligned with my vision, I didn't even think about hunger. I remember a few weeks would go by and then I was like, wow, I completely forgot that I would normally binge eat. And it was because I found something greater and all the minor bad habits began to fall away. Now here's a caveat that there were moments in my life afterwards, small brief moments where life was way too stressful. It was in those moments I began to self-scare. I thought about the worst case scenarios and ruminating and so forth, and that brought back the binge eating. And it was only until I stopped, aligned myself with the higher vision, I fell in love with it and got busy with the process. I find that boredom leads to desires, and when you're in that desiring state, it's really hard not to continue in the cycles of self-sabotage. I think the reason why a lot of us are in these self-sabotage stages and we're consumed by these low operating bad habits is that because we're disconnected from source. We don't have a vision of the person who we want to be and we don't fall in love with it. Even if we have that vision, we think about it, we don't think from it, we don't become it. And it's that constant state of desiring. You end up desiring food, you end up desiring numbing and those kinds of things. You might have heard the quote before that the man who has a why can bear almost any how. Your why in this modern era is to create your 10.0 self, your dream person, and fall in love with it. Adopt that consciousness of what does my 10.0 version look like, and I'm gonna be it, and I'm gonna see it inside of my head. Whether that's the artist, athlete, entrepreneur, you stack those three together and then you become infinite. You start to open yourself up to all the possibilities that that mindset can bring you. I noticed that when I was living from that wish fulfilled, I had so much alignment that I got into flow state. And when you're in flow state and you're doing the actions that are deeply aligned with who you deeply see yourself as, you don't know time as it passes by. And that was the thing to kick my binge eating. I wasn't constantly focused on myself. I was preoccupied on my highest vision. And by doing that, time passed by and I wouldn't even feel hunger. It was by becoming that creative source that I secretly sought out. I ended up dissolving in giving my deepest gifts. So a practical tip that I got from The Artist Way is look at your bad habits and look at the one that you find gets you angry the most. Like, you can't believe that you are continuing to self-sabotage through this. Mine was binge eating. You will normally have a few bad habits, but there's gonna be one of them that's most painful. We're gonna become aware of it and conscious of what it's doing. For instance, while I was binge eating, I found it to be helpful to journal it down and to track it, to notice when I was actually binge eating. It was almost every time where I had it set for 8 p.m. to do my YouTube recordings, I was doing that binge eating then. If we can see the timings where it happens, it loses some power. While we're engaging in the bad habit, if we become very intentional and conscious, I noticed that when I was in the grocery stores and grabbing the junk food, I lost the creative vision. What was on the top of my mind was completing the binge. It was like, I need to get the junk food. Nothing else was happening inside of my mind. Now that we're aware of our bad habits, we can intentionally engage in them. So while I was eating a cheeseburger, for instance, I would slow it down. I would think about, wow, I'm eating this cheeseburger. What is the cost of this? Is this something that aligns with my deepest self? And by slowing it down and breathing into the cheeseburger and breathing dimensionally wider, by breathing deeply into the root of your bad habit, it will begin to lose even more power. And over a sustained period of time, if you have that higher vision of who you're trying to become and you're more conscious and intentional while you're doing your bad habit, we don't focus on the thing we're trying to get rid of. We find that higher creative vision and let it completely dissolve all the obstacles that are blocking us. Your bad habits are a creativity issue.